Something happened there. I don't know what, yeah.
Well, that's why I was just trying to see what was going on. Okay, we won't worry about it.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be working, and we're appreciative of the folks that have come from Fire and Water Festival tonight, Maria and Paul. And if you want to just share with us and make your case, it's talking about possibility of moving the Fire and Water Festival over to the Lakers Ski Club property. So whoever's going to lead out on that one, please go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll start. Paul can chime in if he'd like to, and certainly Keegan's got some words about fire and water, I'm sure. But we're really happy that you guys are sitting down and talking to us about this, because it's something that has been in the background of Fire and Water Music Festival's mind for quite a few years. Thus the name Fire and Water, but we've never really had an opportunity to be on the water, and we all know that this is a cornerstone event of Lac du Bonnet's, and we'd like to keep improving it every year, tailoring it so that we can make it something that's really memorable and desirable for people to attend and enjoy live music. So in 2019, we actually did a bit of a tour of the water ski club, being that it's a nice open spot and not utilized at its full potential for right now. But the committee, a group in the committee walked around and we had some great conversation and went through some of the pros and cons, and it was agreed upon that we should approach the town and go forth with the idea of moving from our current location, which is not terrible in itself, but it's just it just lacks some of the beauty that we could be presenting with what we've got in Lac du Bonnet. So we're not totally disappointed with what we have, but we are looking to improve, always looking to improve. So as we're evolving to that goal of making the festival something really special, up comes the idea of moving it to a smaller, more intimate location on the water, which again, we all know that there's that beauty of the water that we have in this town that would be really nice to for the festival and for all the people who are involved in it. The challenges, of course, as we posed in our letter, we've gone through them. If council has already reviewed them, I don't want to waste any time going through the real, the pros and cons. There is pros, there is cons, but one of the items that was needed to be done was to survey the neighbors. We want to be good neighbors, so we want to certainly ask the neighbors, and of 13 people that were contacted, only one was opposed, and so we had a pretty good ratio of people who are all for it and think that it's a great idea and a great use of that piece of property for August long weekend. Paul, you want to add anything more?
I'll be available to answer questions, or as far as my vision goes. I like the rest of the committee, welcome the idea of a little more grass and a little more water, a little better visual, and possibly by including some land across the road, possibly some trees for camping. That's been one of the stumbling blocks to getting people to stay over and buy a weekend pass. We feel is that the camping was a little bit sort of urban, as it was, sort of too much pavement and we envision something a little more pastoral, I guess you could say, or
Ambiance.
arboral. Is that a thing? And so we would include some private property across the road, and we're thinking that we'd probably have to also utilize that private property for parking, and have a crossing guard in place during festival hours on each side of the road. I think I mean, if council has any questions we could address. We see this as a trial run, I think. Would you guys agree with that? Eldon and Marie, it's a trial run on our behalf.
Yes.
We don't see why it shouldn't work. Some of the stumbling blocks are the lack of power. We'd have to depend on generators a little bit more. That issue of the crossing guard for the parking across the road is a bit of a stumbling block to us. If we have a positive result from this, we would like to work with the town and as far as beautifying the area a little bit, moving some trees in and making ourselves a permanent site for us to use and for anybody else to use the rest of the year that the council deemed, whatever the council of the day would deem as being appropriate for the site. It's just walking around, it wouldn't take much to dress it up a little bit, some fresh gravel in some areas and maybe a little bit of work on the waterfront and the docks. And we wanted to talk to council about the building when we don't know what plans they have for it or what if they've had an assessment done on the building. Eldon is in the building trades and he had a quick look at the outside. We didn't see anything too terribly wrong with the outside, but we haven't done a complete tour of it. So that's about all I would have to say.
Okay, thank you. And council, questions for them?
Paul, it's Greg here. There is power to that building that you were talking about there. I can't remember if that's a 100 amp or a 200 amp panel in there, but there is a service to that building and a meter. So I mean, if like power for your if it ever came to that, power for your electrical equipment like your bands and stuff like that, that is a source right there.
Yeah, we had hoped to be able to utilize whatever power was there. We just didn't think it would be enough. There's some other things we have to provide. We have to provide, a little bit of power for a first aid center, and a little bit of power for a green room for the artists, and perhaps that power could be used for that. We're convinced we can make it work anyway.
Space-wise, how does that compare to where you are? It seems to me like it's a lot smaller, but I haven't really sat down and figured it out. But
compared to what the area that we actually utilize on the site that we're on, it's about the same, but of course we have access to a much larger piece of property there, and we have parking for the artists and the volunteers in behind, which we wouldn't have in this case. We would have some handicap parking and some access for maybe a drop-off area for artists that are coming in from their camping area. But we wouldn't have obviously enough room to park too many people. There may be a need for not just handicap parking, but seniors parking perhaps at that site. Anybody who really needs to park closer, and I'm not sure how we'd sort that out, but I'm sure we can sort it out somehow. It may mean that we have a slightly smaller footprint as far as a liquor permit goes. we don't bill ourselves as the kind of festival that needs to consume a lot of liquor to have a good time. Our audience is growing in age. We as much as we've tried over the years to bring younger people into the festival with their type of music, and Sheldon before us always made sure there was a heavy metal band on the Friday night, and we really didn't ever get. We have the folk, the youth that are interested in folk music, but as far as that goes, we've never really been able to get the young people really involved. Not sure what it would take other than that folk crowd. So yeah, the footprint is a little bit smaller, but we don't think that's a problem.
Questions from others?
Yeah, do you guys foresee being able to keep the boat launch open at the same time as the festival in that grounds, or would you be looking at using that area as well?
No, I don't think there's any way we could close the boat launch on the August long weekend. No, that would be an impossibility, I think.
Okay, just asking.
Yeah, and one of the points that we're going to have to look at is that we'll have to canvass a few of the avid fishermen in the area and see if there is any fishing tournaments or anything going on that weekend. Paul didn't think so, but we'll just, again, be good neighbors and make sure that, we put the word out soon enough, and ask a few of the local avid fishermen, maybe approach some of the, through the contacts that I've developed in the ice fishing derby, and just ask, if there is any word of something going on that weekend, that, we will certainly discourage any of our participants or patrons from parking in that area, because we know that is a busy spot. So we'll try and do our best to keep our people off that property, just so that we don't encroach on the boat launches needs as well.
So for like quality of sound and stuff, do you think you guys are going to have enough profiles to like break up the different areas a bit better than on the previous one? Because right now things get a little like muddy, how's that going to work for you guys? Like, what are you thinking? 2 stages, 3 stages?
Yeah, as far as the scheduling of artists goes, we've pretty much decided to only ever have one act on at a time. We've been discussing some different sort of setup situations where we could utilize the tent and the outdoor stage as the 2 stages and not have a 3rd stage at all. That being said, we had the indoor concerts, which were a big hit at the arena. We may have to rethink that and come up with a different strategy for that. Maybe a sort of a timeout at some point for a series of several acoustic concerts in different locations that aren't bleeding into each other. So yeah, I guess that would be to be discussed. We've definitely considered it.
I think just for a heads up, this summer we're doing that reconstruction on the back wall of the arena. I'm not sure exactly of the timing on that yet, but I'm just waiting for some engineers' drawings on that at the moment. And once we have that, we'll know better. So it may not be available depending on when and if you're at the old site this year versus the other site, just for your information.
Yeah.
And we've also been told about the changes to the ball diamond, and that's going through. So that's also going to change the footprint of the old location as well.
I think the ball field was left open all on that one side and on the end in order for you to be able to utilize that, because that was a fairly significant discussion a few years ago, I remember,
Mhm.
so that we could accommodate both events there. So, but there is definitely some changes there. Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
I have a question, Ted here. Paul, you mentioned about a trial run on moving over to the Lakers property. Fire and Water has been very successful over the years, and this is going a little ahead, but having successful years again. What will happen if you need more land where you are or will be? Is that
Well,
possible?
yeah, in terms of the size of the festival, it depends how you define success. Fire and Water has been successful in bringing a fantastic weekend of fun to people for a long time, but we really have, other than a couple of blips where our sales went up and then fell back down in the following years, we've never really been successful as far as growing the festival to the next sort of level. And one of the things I think that makes our festival great is the fact that it is a smaller festival, and a smaller space might even be better for us. And to limit the number of tickets and there's many festivals in the country that sell out every year during the winter, just because they have a small eventual or a small maximum size. So we don't foresee that happening. We would love to have that problem someday, but I don't see that. It's getting more and more difficult to get, well, we call them bums in seats, right? At any kind of live music event. You have your big, I call them uber successful festivals like the Winnipeg Folk Fest in Mariposa, and then you've got the next level of festivals that always just kind of stay about the same size. And quite often, I used to go to the Trout Festival in Northeastern Ontario for years, and it's always the same crowd, and it always sells out, and there's a limited amount of space, and that's just the way it is, and that makes for a very nice festival.
What do you see as your target numbers for here?
That's not my thing. I'm the artist guy.
That was open to whoever wanted to answer it. What kind of numbers are you actually talking about typically? I know this last year doesn't help you have a typical.
I was gonna say this, you know what, even this last year with having such a small event, we still had a fairly similar number of people that we typically have 150 to 200 people. Again, like Paul says, bums in seats, and quite often a lot of those bums are volunteers. Paid people are not that 300 mark. They may be 100 of that 300 people. So we're still struggling to try and get the numbers up of paid patrons. And again, like Paul said, there's been a few years where we've had a few blips where we've had, such as the Ray St. Germains of the world that packed the house. But those were few and far between. But again, it certainly isn't it's always been a bit of a struggle, and it's not for lack of trying. I'll tell you, everybody in these committees that have worked over the years on this have scratched their heads, and that wasn't I just didn't scratch because it is definitely a strange being why we don't get more. And yeah, we don't know. We can't honestly, Gord, to tell you the truth, we can't give you a concrete number on that.
No, I was just curious the range, yeah. And just something that came to mind as you were chatting is, and I don't know what you use for a tent. I know you've had a tent there on different occasions. Do you rent that, or what's the deal? I was just asking about your tent that you rent for, or do you rent a tent, or what do you do?
Yes, we rent well, in the past we've rented several, but we will stick to the one great big tent that we normally rent, what we call the circus tent, and it's rented for this year already. So that's our main tent, and it's rented from a local business.
Okay, yeah, because I know there's a guy in town that has, or just out of town, that has a tent, and he's now getting quite elderly, and he's not hasn't used it for years, but it was a very, very good tent, and I was just thinking, well, put that thing to use, you know. So we can talk about that on a separate occasion, but it just came to mind, and it's a very nice size unit as well. So, any other questions? I guess the one thing that I would just want to comment on is that we have that site designated for our marina, and we've got to get the RFP out for that. The RFP is ready to go, and we had some other things that we were thinking in terms of that property. So I want you to be aware of that all comes into the part of the consideration, and when we're having this discussion, you know. Yeah.
Well, fair enough. I think that, you know, we're always, I think all of our committee is pretty open-minded to development in the community, and you know, being hopeful that that marina would come through. We would gladly move someplace else. You know, that's something that I think will be very important for our community. But as Paul said, this is a trial run, and the event park, should it go through, perhaps that would be our new location. So, you know, we're not saying this is forever, but we certainly want to give it a try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you see yourselves using the building that is, or either one or both of those buildings that are on the site, or not?
Absolutely. If those buildings are usable, we will we'll put some sweat equity into them, and get them up and running, and we will use them.
Yeah. Okay. Because you know, I think the building is usable for a weekend kind of event. I think there would be more work required if we're planning to use it on a more permanent basis, but it's certainly usable on the short term. And I think just probably the major thing would be the cleanup of it to make it, you know, just presentable. I'm just thinking I guess the only, you bring in porta potties, I guess, for washroom facilities.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions? Well, you guys have been.
I don't have any questions, but I just hope that that the COVID situation treats us all good and we can get something done this summer. I was listening to Dr. Rusin this morning. So was Darcy, and I didn't like all what I had. I didn't like what I heard in regards to everybody getting a vaccine and getting into herd immunities and stuff like that in a timely manner. What did you get out of that, Darcy?
Oh, basically they're going to be doing distribution once enough supply is completed or received. They'll be distributing among age groups. So they're starting with the most elderly, and then basically breaking it down to 2 to 3 week intervals determined by healthcare region. They're looking at setting up another super site to be split between Interlake Eastern as well as Southern Health. They're hoping to get the patents through Health Canada for the three corporations that are currently trying to get approval to be able to distribute. Right now, all they've got is Pfizer and Moderna, and with the Pfizer product, unfortunately, it's got very specific guidelines and shelf life. So unless you have the right type of refrigeration and the right type of training, once you open that vial, it's only good for 5 days. So it's very, very specific. That's why they're basically handing it out with an eyedropper specifically to healthcare professionals as well as people in communal living settings such as personal care homes as well as remote and northern communities where they're very tight living conditions and the risk of the spread is quite significant. With the Moderna product, unfortunately, it's very slow because it's obviously being distributed worldwide, but it's got a longer shelf life and doesn't have quite the same restrictions in place and proper and specific handling. There was one question that was put forth today. An individual had asked why they weren't considering people with compromised immunities or that had other health issues as being part of the primary groups of people, along with the personal care homes and remote communities, receiving vaccinations first. And it was basically put out because it would be an absolute geographic nightmare trying to figure out who these people are in order to get the shot into every one of them. It's a lot better coverage and a faster coverage of being able to hit all the age groups on 2 to 3, 4 week basis. So basically start with the people over 100 and work your way down from there to be able to cover as many people as possible. So that's basically what they're working on. Right now, supply is a huge issue. And as everybody saw in the news, the plant that produces the Pfizer product is located in Bangladesh, had a large fire, so it's significantly diminished supply chain. Unfortunately, the federal government did not arrange for a backup plan B in case something like this nature had happened. So everybody's just kind of waiting in the wings and waiting to see what happens next.
Okay.
Yeah, Darcy, that was the part that I heard that I didn't like was the supply issue.
Yeah.
I think Manitoba Health and these health districts are doing a pretty good job of getting prepared for it. But if they can't get any doses, it's not going to happen for a while. And I think that's our challenge. And I'm a little concerned about the timelines on this as far as it's going to be 3/4 of another year before we get through this.
Well, they're hoping to have supply chains back up and running by mid to late February.
Yeah.
So if that's the situation, then people in the, they basically plan to cover most of the population up until the age group between 40 to 50 by the end of March is what their intent is. Whether or not that comes to pass, I don't know. At this point, nobody really knows the answer to that, unfortunately. But this was a call-in, like a town hall that was done with Minister's Office from Municipal Relations this afternoon, and Dr. Brent Rusin and Dr. Jats Reimer had sat in on the calls and provided the feedback as to what the situation was. They hoped that by the fall time that the other 3 patent pending producers will be approved by Health Canada and they can start rolling it out to physician offices as well as pharmacies so that anybody wanting it can basically just visit their local doctor or pharmacy and receive the shot.
Okay, thanks, Darcy, for the update. Any final thoughts from you folks that you want to make, or any questions left, and we'll move on.
We're happy.
All righty. Very good. We'll just carry on here with the rest of our agenda for tonight then. And thank you for participating. Appreciate that. And we'll get back to you shortly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks. Take care. Okay, the next one is the
Water Services Board,
what's that?
What?
the Water Services Board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4.1.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't put a
We-
resolution on this. I put it on because I have a question.
Could I just interrupt, folks? We need to adopt an agenda and,
we
stuff
did
here
that
before.
already.
Did we?
Yep.
That must have been when I was off air there a little bit.
Yeah, no, we did that right up front. So, so this one is the letter that was from the Water Services Board asking for our schedule of investment in water projects over the next 5 years. And I guess that relates to how they fit that into their funding. So Darcy, you wanted to comment?
Well, it was more of just a question, really. We receive the same request every year. And in years past, we've filled them, taken the time to fill them out. And, just kind of the last one that we had filled out, we, had listed that we were doing our replacement of our water lines, which we did. And then at the end of, in the fall of 2020, when we received notification that they were interested in providing some funding towards a new SCADA, because it was determined that the parameters to receive that funding wasn't to council's liking, we declined gratefully the funding that they had provided. So my question to council is, do I take the time to fill out this request project funding form? Or do I just set it aside and just say thanks very much and don't even bother?
And that's absolutely a fair question in light of what we did in fall. And I think our challenge with the Water Services Board is that when we did our last water project, it was federal money and not provincial money, because the province has not been chipping in over the last several years at all on these water projects. And so we just had the federal money, and they allowed us to manage that with our engineers and so on. And we're able to do that for a reasonable price. Whereas with the work that the Water Services Board was offering the money this last fall, we could do that project probably for about the same price as our contribution to it, and then we manage the project. So that was the distinct difference in operating with the province versus with the federal government. So I guess the question, Darcy, back to you would be: have you seen any funding at all that would come from the federal government? I know I haven't, and we've got a request into James Bazan, who in turn put that request over to their people at the federal government. So I'm just going to make a note to follow up with James on that, but at the present, we haven't had any response to that. So
There's been absolutely nothing with regards to grants for different capital projects that have come out. The only grants that have come out is with regards to green team grants for summer students. That's pretty much about it.
we just had that series of grants, but again, I think that was from the province.
Building sustainable communities is still available.
Sustainable communities, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that had gone through. I mean, we can certainly apply for it again, but it has to be for a different project.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of that one more for additional help with the arena project. Now, is that sustainable communities that we have that, we got that grant last year or whenever it was?
Yep.
It was the same one, okay.
So we can't go for one on the arena then?
No, no.
No?
Any thoughts from anybody?
What about the dock? Now, thoughts on the Water Services Board. I am dead against going anywhere near those guys. And I have been for over 20 years now. And the latest fiasco that's come out with Awani Park and probably Brookfield and Totem Water Project, where we're looking at over $9 a cubic meter. And those guys help? Not that way. So,
Yeah. I'm just wondering, would, like our federal money that we got for the dock had no strings attached to it as far as getting other grants.
That's right.
I'm just wondering, and our dock has gone a little bit higher than what we were wanting it to go. What do you think of the possibility of applying for that Sustainable Communities grant for the dock? Would that fit in? I haven't checked the criteria very well for that, so I don't know the answer to the question.
well, I believe the dock is a green project in, light of what we're doing, and sustainable development, yes. And I was looking at the dock numbers the other day and thinking, well, the contractor dropped 10%, but we still got a 13% sales tax, or 12%, whatever it is right now.
Well, and then
So-
the other thing we've got there is we do have the pylon for the airplane and the lighting. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a little bit extra there. But I noticed in that Sustainable Development Grant that, for smaller project, you could get up to 75,000, but if it's categorized as a larger project, we could get up to, I think it was 300,000. So
Yeah.
if we could pull that off, we'd be very happy.
Well, it does say capital infrastructure, and the dock is that, and it enhances the community or has culture or recreation development behind it. So it would meet the criteria.
Yeah, okay. Well,
No,
I know that doesn't answer this question, but it does, it's another discussion we needed to have anyway. So I think if well, maybe let's make that as a separate item here, but let's deal with this one first here on the water services.
well, we're not going to deal with them. So we're going to do it on our own like we planned on. And that I was just,
We need everybody in agreement, that's all,
Yeah.
or majority, that's all. Yeah.
So Darcy, just to get like the other side of this here, when we do this, do we have to submit projects like right now, or would you just be doing this to keep a door open for later? And I guess how much time are we talking about? Is this like an hour of your time? Is this like a week that gets destroyed? How much of a pain is this thing? And yeah, when would we have to have an answer on a project if we were to pursue this?
Well,
You're looking at a couple of days to put everything together. They want to see numbers, so I would need quotes. How fast or how slow I get the quotes is kind of up in the air. Other
So
than
we
that,
have-
it's basically just a submission. Like, you really don't know what they're going to approve, and it certainly wouldn't be this year. Like, they're always kind of planning, like, this is like a 5-year plan for them. They want to know ahead so they can kind of budget and plan accordingly.
Mhm.
Although with the turn down of the 300,000 that was in the fall of 2020, we may have very well shot ourselves in the foot. So that's why I bring it back, that I know that, there's some popular opinion that, would prefer that we didn't deal with Water Services Board. And that's why I'm putting the question back to you is, do I waste my time in putting something together that if we were successful in some way, shape, or form of funding for a water or wastewater project, if if that's the flavor of it, then I'm not going to waste my time if it's just going to be declined and the funding returned.
Well, I think as you look at the letter in the second paragraph, it says, once your projects are received, they will be rated, prioritized based on the board's criteria for capital works for funding consideration in the board's 22-27 capital plan.
Mhm.
Projects that are addressed public health and environmental issues and regionalization of services will be given the highest priority. So while we've got our water project coming up this year, and we've got, it's not particularly a public health issue. It's a long-term planning to keep ourselves in proper condition. And it's got nothing to do with regionalization. So we sort of don't fit some of the criteria that they are laid out, that they have laid out there. And the deadline is February 28th. Our engineers just sent, was it this past Monday, I think it was, Brent got the copy of the initial engineers' work and their tender proposal. So so that hasn't gone out yet, even for pricing. So your wish, folks, is
I don't think we have anything to put forward. I don't think we have a good solid crack at it. So let's save Darcy a bit of work time so she can focus on other stuff. So we
Yeah.
all know there's other
Yeah.
things that could eat up Darcy's time right now.
okay.
I concur with that, Keegan. We're not prepared to do this, and if we just embarrass ourselves with it or whatever.
Brian, you okay with that?
Yeah, we still got the arena fix up. We got the dock to get done. I think we gotta get that, make sure we get that focused and done first before we start moving on some other projects.
Yeah. All right, so we got common consent that we won't move any further with that.
Thank you.
Do you need a resolution on that?
Well, it was just brought for
We're not doing
discussion.
anything.
No, just for information, for discussion.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is the Lac du Bonnet Jack Frost Challenge. The Lac du Bonnet Community Development, well, you've read this, I don't need to read it to you. You guys up to speed on this?
Not me. I couldn't.
You couldn't read? Okay, I'll read it to
Yeah, I
you.
didn't have.
The Lac du
I
Bonnet
didn't have-
Community Development Corporation, RM Recreation, and the Winnipeg River Recreation District partnered with Green Action Center to bring Jack Frost Challenge to Lac du Bonnet. So, and in a nutshell, they want some items for gifts, to prizes to be handed out. Did you get any sense, Darcy, what that might look like?
Well, I took a peek around, and I know the RM is basically putting up some RM paraphernalia, like some freezer jackets, sweatshirt, hoodies. And if that's not available, then they're basically putting up a cash value of $500. It's a week-long event that's taking place, and the idea is that it gets families, out and about, getting exercise, and given that we've had so many challenges and with COVID, and everybody having to be distanced, it's just kind of part of the mind, body, spirit, and soul, and remaining active is basically the challenge of it.
Will this interfere with our winter deal?
Our winter
No.
deal's not happening.
It's not happening.
Okay.
Someone
And
would
it's
like,
not happened because of what, of COVID-19 or just,
Because of COVID-19, we can't take the risk that people are going to congregate. And when we did the last Family Fun Day, we had well over 300 people in attendance. Crowd at the dock was just incredible. People, all around the campfire doing, roasting hot wieners and hot dogs and s'mores. You know, families all huddled together, doing the downhill slide. We had the wagon rides. We had all the events over at the community center as well as the arena and the bowling alley. It was a great time and everybody had, a wonderful day. But unfortunately, there's no way you can possibly social distance and keep those kinds of activities on the go.
And I can tell you right now that even on a good weather afternoon on a weekend, the dock's already too full. With, people piled up. So yeah, we'll just have to revisit that next year, knock on wood, and restart it.
Yeah.
And I think with the arena closed, it's just made the dock area that much more appealing, especially in the nice days that we've had. So.
Yeah, and especially since we've got the open rink down there right now as well. That's made a huge difference for a lot of people that like to skate.
Yeah, and just a comment on that while we're on that subject is the last couple of days there's been drill down there doing some testing for the dock work, soil sampling and what have you. So they've been doing some drilling on the ice. So someone prepared to make a motion regarding the contribution to the Jack Frost Challenge?
I'll move that do we have a stock of stuff, Darcy?
I have some golf shirts and that's pretty much about it. But we can always put together we can pick up some additional prize stuff if you like.
Okay, I'll move that Darcy puts together an assortment of things with our name on it, and maybe if she has to add to it with other stuff there to a maximum of $200. Is that
Do we
okay?
have a seconder for that?
I
I'll second
second.
it.
Okay,
Ted's got it.
I heard. Okay, thanks, Brett. And any further discussion on that? All in favor, please indicate.
Aye.
All right.
It's carried. And then we've got our environmental options financial statements for 2019 and 2020. Those are our in-house statements. The financial statements are eventually consolidated into the consolidated statements, but these are the individual ones just for environmental options. So we wanted to get that looked after. Be it resolved, the council approves the 2019 and 2020 financial statements for environmental options as presented. Is there a mover for that?
I'll move it.
Brian moves it. Seconder?
Greg?
Greg, thank you. Any questions, discussion?
What is the projected outcome from next year? Because I noticed the 2020 is a lot bigger loss than 2019.
Two things. I did some number crunching because I had a request from the Clipper for a response to what was going on, and I think the one thing that minimizes the impact, because RM was the largest customer, and the fact is that the more than half of the recyclable materials that have been credited to the RM have been drop-offs at the bins here in town. And so we don't see that changing because people are coming from, first of all, from the west side of the river. They're not going to drive out to the site out there to drop their recycle off when they're coming to the post office or store in town. And so I don't see that changing. And I asked Darcy the question earlier today, and she said, I think there's going to be more of them dropping off there. So I don't know, but that's just the opinion there. So in fact, what happens is the environmental options will still get the same revenue on that product that comes from the bins. And the town will actually pick up the charge on that. And roughly half of that, this past year, the RM's portion was $49,000 as an expense. So roughly half of that will be gone. So that'll become the town's expense. But what compensates for that is the return. So the RM was talking about $56,000 return from MMSM, and we will get roughly half of that, or just a little bit over half. So that's around $29,000 to compensate for our payment of $24,000. So we actually make $5,000 as a town. Environmental options, they lose that 50% value of the
Product.
revenue from the RM. But as well, the other side of it is there's some of those products we actually have to pay to drop them off at different places. And so that cost will be minimized or eliminated on that portion, the RM's portion. And then there's one other point in there, it's gone for me. Oh, just the transportation of all the additional material. That now is not our cost anymore. That'll go over to belong to the RM. So there's some loss of revenue, but there's also some savings on some costs. And we're projecting right now that probably the difference would be about $15,000 lost to the environmental options income. But the environmental options board met earlier today and discussed this, and we have one person that's willing to take a layoff. So they want to go back to Alberta, and we also know that that we need a little more help with our work with Jen working at the water plant half-time. We need some more help with our public works stuff. And so Darcy's got a request out to the union to see if we can create a casual position and then utilize one or two of the staff when we have to short them a little bit on time at environmental options, but to give them some extra time during snowfalls and other occasions when we need them at the public works. So we'll be saving some money. We'll probably save that $15,000 in labor at the public works, at the environmental options, and we'll supplement that extra help at the RM to keep them in wages that can work for them, at least the equivalent of what they've got. So that's kind of the projected direction there. We'll save some money at the environmental options. We'll fill the gap at the town, and hopefully that'll balance.
We get like bids on our recycling products, do we not, from 3 different companies?
What's that?
We get bids on our recycling products.
Well, we get pricing. I think it's every month we get new pricing from them, and it varies. And actually, the buyer that the RM has chosen, they're the ones typically that have the worst prices. So we shop around. Darlene does that before we ship, and so.
It just seems that when you do any kind of research on recycling, just a casual search of Google, you find that, especially in the States, there's a lot of municipalities and small recycling companies that are not making any money. And what they are selling to the larger corporations that are in recycling are just finding convenient ways to dump it into landfills, because it's cheaper to dump it in a landfill than it is to actually properly recycle the materials. So I don't know if that's the case in Manitoba, if that's happening with these larger companies, but it seems like that's what's happening in the States ever since China shut down. So it's pretty suspect if you're selling your product to a company that's offering you the worst prices for recycling, you have to wonder if actually any of it's really getting recycled, or is it just end up in some landfill in a big city landfill. So that's my concerns, and I think that issue needs to be going up to the province to be looking at, because it's kind of, it's hypocritical to be promoting all this money on recycling on TV all the time. We're recycling everywhere. And then you're finding out that any casual reading tells you almost the exact opposite as to what is happening right now with recycling, especially with plastic.
Well, about 2 or 3 years ago, the market really fell out of the recycling because China decided that they weren't taking any more dirty material, which consists of basically of mixed material, and it all needed to be clean. And so that wasn't happening. And even Manitoba Stewardship, they don't recommend doing it clean. We do it clean here, and we make some value on some of the stuff. But I'll be honest with you, I can't tell you where that ends up. But they're paying us for some of it, and I'm sure they're not taking it to the landfill when they're paying us for it.
Well, private companies are only in it to make money. So, I mean, you're not going to be trying to take recycled materials and lose money. If it costs too much to actually recycle a product, you're going to make your profit by dumping in a landfill somewhere. Like, that's just common sense for a private company.
They won't buy it off us in the first place then. We would just be stuck stockpiling it up.
Yeah. Well, and this is the challenge that we have, for example, with glass, is that there's really a minimal market for it. That's why we crush it and try and dispose of it other ways. But we have to take the glass in order to get the MMSM rebate. If we don't accept glass, we don't get the rebate. So, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. Is there any other questions on the finances? Kind of wandered a little bit on that one, but we're.
My only other question is, do we want to be advertising in the Clipper at all that environmental options will be open, and we want everyone to make sure they're recycling their product at the place there, given in light of the current situation with the RM?
I would put something in, but if we're going to do it, I'd say we do it as like an advertisement, like, hey, recycling here is guaranteed to go to, to be used in an environmentally friendly way, and it supports local employment, and it will stay open. I'd leave something like that. I wouldn't necessarily take a direct swing at them, but I wouldn't be against just letting people know so that we can kill some of the rumor mill, right?
Yeah, and I think I agree with putting that in there. I think the response, I don't know what the paper is going to print, but if they put in everything that I responded to in those questions, it does kind of answer that. But what I would see is the kind of the critical target group for our ad would be for the RM folks that are presently bringing stuff to town. And we want them to know that that venue is absolutely still open for them.
Yeah, they're welcome to continue donating or dropping their garbage there.
Yeah. So let's have a secondary motion after on that issue. Are we ready for the question on the financial statements?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor, then please indicate.
Aye.
Okay, someone prepared to make a motion that we do some advertising just regarding environmental options to encourage the community to utilize it. Brian, you're making the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Yeah.
I second.
Ed seconds. All right, any further discussion on that? All in favor, please indicate.
Aye.
Is carried. We had, sorry, I got a short memory here on this one. We talked a moment ago about a motion for something else. What was that?
Just to put out an informative letter or something in the newspaper, letting RM residents know that they're still welcome to drop off their garbage there free of charge, and doing so supports
Not
local
garbage, recycling, not garbage.
Recycling. That was the motion we just voted on.
Yeah, that's the one we just voted on.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was.
Earlier.
No, that was the one we voted on.
Okay, all righty. Good.
Yeah.
Got
Anything
all
else?
turned around if that was the
Yes.
financials there.
Yes, the word is recycling.
Yes.
Keegan will get you do that word game there, the old red green word game.
Darcy, do you have some in camera?
We're still recording, eh?
We're still recording.
We were, yeah, we are.
Okay. Are we going in camera then or not? Or
Well, I'm just asking if Darcy's got anything.
I don't have anything in camera. Actually, you know what? I do have one thing in camera.
Okay. All right, would someone move that we would go to in camera?
Greg moves in camera.
Who was that? Sorry, I missed
Greg,
that.
Greg.
Greg, thank you.
Second,
I should just read this properly. Be it resolved, the council does now adjourn the regular order of business to sit in the committee in the whole. In camera and all discussion shall be kept in confidence. I think you know that by now, but.
yeah.
Greg, Greg still moves.
Okay.
Ed
and
seconds.
Ed seconds. All right, all in favor, please indicate.
aye.
Aye.
That is carried, and let me just get this recording off of here. I've got to open it up to do that.